Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our another edition of the Gray Area on the Black Man Unfiltered Network, simulcasting on the Sparta HQ Network. I'm Mr. Bennett with my partner, as always,
This is Sparta!
the Ghost of Sparta, aka Peter, aka Panayotis. Yasu, my brother, what is going on?
What is going on, my man? How are you tonight?
I am okay. I'm okay. First, first of all, Happy New Year to everyone. Certainly who's joining us tonight. We appreciate certainly the support that we've gotten since we started the show. It's like 2+ years now. We started this show, and the support that we've gotten, the fact that you guys spend your Sundays with us, we're greatly appreciative of that. And so certainly we're looking forward to even more content, more conversation in 2026, more interviews. So again, we're planning our this upcoming season, and certainly we would just want to have a positive space to have intelligent conversation, certainly in these spaces. So again, as you come in tonight, make sure you hit the like button, not only here but hop on over to the Sparta HQ Network and show some love over there as we're simulcasting over there. If you want to contribute either a Cash App or Super Chat to the Black Man Unfiltered Network, you see scrolling at the bottom of the screen, the Cash App. Also, you can drop a Super Chat, certainly to the channel as well. And certainly any way that you want to bless us, we appreciate your support. You see our Cash App and Super Chat scrolling also at the bottom of the screen. But again, Happy New Year to everyone. When do you think? I think you can say Happy New Year up to, I think it's like 2 weeks after New Year, if you haven't seen anybody. I forget.
In the Greek culture, they say up to a month.
Up to a month. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
So everybody depends who it is too.
Yeah, for sure. So again, hope you guys enjoyed your New Year. Did you do anything special around that time?
Actually, my buddy was DJing down the street, so I went to support him, and I was hanging out with his wife and them.
Okay. Awesome. Yeah, my wife and I, we've made it. This is the 3rd year in a row where we kind of take a little pilgrimage. We just drive 2 hours to get down to Atlantic City. And that really helps us out in terms of just distressing, because the holidays really can be kind of stressful in themselves. I mean, we hosted, we had Christmas Eve here with my family here. And then, certainly her family on Christmas Day. So there's a lot of preparation, getting the house in order, and, just a lot of things just kind of going into that. And in fact, I didn't even open up Christmas gifts until like 3-4 days afterwards. I was so burnt out from Christmas. And there was just stuff like, Dad, your gifts are still under the tree. Do you want to open them now? It's like, oh yeah, I guess I will open them at this point. But I was so out from the whole Christmas, open up gifts on Christmas Day or whatnot. I had other things that were going on. And, so definitely it was something that, it just took me a while to kind of, so just going away, figure a 2-hour drive, it's good because, anything that's happening at home, you're not going to necessarily just turn around right away and go back home. And it's distracting enough, just being at the ocean, you're looking out the windows or whatnot, and, there's the ocean and the views and whatnot. It's just a time just to relax. And so we've done that for the last 3 years. And so I would recommend that to a lot of people. If you can't, pull away from things. And I'm learning in my older age that it's not always about just doing things, that you need to certainly give yourself some time to do that. But certainly want to acknowledge some people in the super chat. So Black Man BMU is out there. He's already recognizing the smooth shaven. So I guess
it's not clean shaven. It's a 5 o'clock shadow. I'm not going clean shaven. You guys, it's my hairy Greek ass for that one.
But again, you look very handsome with the, certainly with the look. Certainly appreciate that. And I must certainly give you props. Let me just grab this guy. As you guys know, I am the president of the 7B Network. And for those you who are not familiar with the 7Bs, it is the bold and the beautiful, the beneficent, benevolent ball brotherhood of the BMU Network. And yes. And he actually gifted me with this mug. I don't know if this will come up on the. I may have to take the.
Right there. You're good right there.
Okay. So as you see here, Mr. President said the 7B Network. So he gifted me with this for Christmas. So I appreciate you sending it to me. But yes, certainly I do represent the ball brotherhood of the network, and so certainly anytime I see Peter in a more cleaner shaven kind of look, Certainly it looks very handsome on him. So yes, appreciate that. So shout out to my man Eric, and certainly in the building. And certainly happy New Year to you. And yes, the Steelers are playing, but I'm not watching because that's just a very stressful undertaking, trying to watch the Steelers play. And so therefore, I may follow the stats and whatnot, but I just can't, because like every game, it doesn't matter if there's been a team that's 1-15 or 15-1. It's the same kind of game. It's going to be a drag out. They're losing right now, and certainly the stuff that happened with DK Metcalf a couple weeks ago, and it's just so this might be the final year. This might be Mike Tomlin's final year, and it's like every year I gotta hear about it. So my thing is, so I'll watch from a distance, but I just can't get myself emotionally invested. Certainly at this point, and usually I do better when I don't watch. Sometimes they tend to do better when I don't watch, but certainly appreciate you being here. But certainly from Angela Williams, appreciate you being here in the chat tonight, and so certainly. I think Min got lost in the email, Peter. So I guess Eric, he's waiting for his mug.
I have his on the order soon. He's coming. He's coming your way.
So he's still waiting on his. And so it says Greeks don't drink. Mountain Dew. I'm not sure the reference there. But you got the Mountain Dew.
Yeah.
We know Pete. See Pete, but he we've talked about this in the past. He's different. He thinks differently from a lot of his Greek counterparts. And obviously, one of our biggest supporters, Mariana, certainly in the chat tonight. Certainly good to have you here on the show tonight. And what do you think of our new banner? I know BMU, he's really big on the AI. And so if you look at a lot of the banners that he's made for a lot of the shows on the Black Man Unfiltered Network, he's using AI to create these banners. So, I mean, I like it, but it's weird. It's like I think he renders you just about perfectly. But as far as for me, like I like it. I like the big arms that he's giving me, much bigger arms than probably what I have. But I look at myself and be like, yeah, I see some of the features there, but it doesn't, like I said, it doesn't look like me, or at least I don't see myself there in a lot of the renderings. But I look at you and it's like, oh yeah, that's Pete in a nutshell. So. But we appreciate, and he's also did it for our one-on-one sports show. We got a new banner for that as well. And it's weird because I look, it's like two different people when I'm looking at the AI banners for the sports show and this one. It's like I'm looking at two different people. But I look at everybody else, and everybody looks the same. And so it's strange. It's a strange strange thing to me. But definitely it is but it's appreciated, certainly the work that he does to bring new ways of enjoying the show. We even have different views now where, again, depending on your device, you can look at us in a vertical view or horizontal view. So he's always trying to do things to certainly uplift the channel. And then our guy all the way from the UK, Peter, Craig in the house. So Peter, boy, old man. Yes, I got Craig from across the pond there, and so certainly appreciate you joining this conversation as well.
But one thing I gotta say about our new banner, we gotta do a little update on our picture because it's 2 years old now.
Yeah,
and like we have to when we hook up next time, we have to definitely do an update on our pictures and send them to
we
them.
can do that. We can certainly do that. But like I like the arms though. You did a good job, with the arms. But but again, facially, I guess it's just about perception, how you see yourself. But with all that being said, but we want to get into a comment on that. It was interesting the banner that BMU chose for the show. So I mean, basically tonight we're talking about the idea of, again, progressive ideals versus cultural values, and I didn't necessarily want to have this in a political conversation, but then they say all things are political, and I know we're very cautious about political conversation in this because it typically goes into sort of one kind of format or another one. We're not talking about parties here, but again, the idea of politics, it does deal with ideology, in terms of how you think, or how do you think things should go, how do you think the world should run. And we were always having these conversations about, what does it mean to be progressive? What does it mean to be conservative, or having cultural values? And we've talked about it kind of around the periphery, different topics. We talked about generational divides. The last show that we did before the break, we talked about the idea of freedom, and it was interesting the conclusion that we came to, that it seems like freedom sometimes feels like an illusion. That for a lot of people, it says, yeah, I want to be free to do what I want and be and act the way I want, or what have you. That sometimes there's a price to be paid through anxiety and not having a sense of direction that freedom can give you. And if you hear, that's my dog barking in the back because he needs to kind of get out of he needs to get out of the out of the room. And I'm hoping one of my daughters can come and grab him because my door is closed. Because like I said, they're still out there partying, so she just got him. Um, but yeah. So I want the conversation tonight to be more, I guess, philosophical, not about who you vote for, or what have you, but just a general conversation about this idea of what does it mean to be a progressive, what it means to have these cultural values, and these ideas of how much do we cling to traditions and values that we may have grew up on, or our parents or parents before them grew up on. And at the end of the day, is that really helping us in this new world and society where there's a lot of changes that are going on? It's like turn on the news and there's all kinds of different things that are happening. And this has been happening for the past 50, 60 years, where there's been a lot of changes, radical in the sense, not ideology wise, but just the change period. That there's been a lot of changes in the world over the past say 60 years, that has people thinking about were the traditional values better than the new ones, or should we still be progressing? And if we are progressing, since since people want to label themselves progressives, what are we progressing to? Like, is there a destination in mind that you want to go, where you see like an ideal society? So I kind of want to have the conversation around there. But when we talk about, just based on the title, what do you think about when we talk about this idea of progressive ideals versus cultural values or traditional ideals in a society? What direction are you typically steered in when it comes just to the topic in general?
I can only speak as a Greek American, because as a Greek American, you've been driven in your head as a little kid. And I mentioned this multiple times on the show. You're Greek, Malaka, you're Greek. That's all that you've been driven in your head all as you're growing up. You're Greek and proud. All right, my Greek accent's horrible, obviously. But when you're driven in your head, and when I broke the mold in my family, I stepped out of that culture being Greek. Look at me. Am I any more different than Greek to you, Paul?
Yeah, you're
unique.
There's a lot of it that you still embrace proudly. I mean, you wear it on your skin, you wear it in just that there's certain ways of thinking that you're still sort of tied to those values. But again, you're not afraid to step out of those things. That's and not let that and necessarily not be defined by those things.
Like, even if you walk into my church, I am probably one of the few people who has tattoos and shows it. I'm probably the only one, where to think about it. So when I stepped out of the everyday normal, watching anime, playing video games, playing football as a Greek, you don't play football as Greek, you play soccer, or they know as football, obviously, in English, or speaking your mind, stepping out of line a little bit, like, yo, maybe you stop think about what other people care, because that's one major thing. A lot of Greeks do care what other people think about them. I don't give a shit. If you have time to talk about me, that means you care about my life more than you care about yours, my friend. So I always took things in a different mindset, if that makes sense.
Yeah. It's it's definitely something that we are sort of fashioned, or our views are like, we don't come into this world with a certain mindset, right? I mean, things are kind of poured into us, things that are taught to us regarding again, how things should go. And So certainly it's a some it's really I guess I look at this less about um conservative versus progressive values. I think at the end of the day, it's just values. It's like whether or not you rock with them or not. Um,
That's
and
correct.
then you always had this idea of, if you go through history. In fact, I've been watching a lot of historical. I'm big into history stuff, so
Hmm.
I watched a lot of World War II content. Like the Nazi Germany content and whatnot, like just different figures and whatnot from the military leaders, Rommel and just a lot Himmler and just a lot of those people. And I'm just wondering if at the time did they think of themselves as progressive? Did they think of themselves as sort of somewhat liberal in a lot of ways in terms of seeing where the state of the country was after World War I, and you had after that big defeat, then you had the Great Depression that came out, and you had Germany and Germans had a view of themselves that wasn't necessarily a positive one, or it seemed like it was very apathetic. And then you had this ideology, and that wasn't the only ideology of the time. Social, what they call it, uh, um, what they call it, social, uh, democratic socialism was the at least the brand of what they were preaching to reformulate the society. And I'm sure to a lot of people, they thought it might have been progressive. But then we learned later on, in terms of the means by which they were kind of going for that, didn't seem very progressive at all. It was kind of regressive because it meant, certain policies that were, undesired peoples were dealt with in certain ways. I'm going to, respect the algorithm here and not, say things that can get us flagged. But, again, if you look at that history, you see a lot of things that they did that were almost like regressive. And is it about? And I was also watching a preview. In fact, this one movie I got to watch. It's on Nuremberg. So you had one of the guys, the main characters there. It was like, was World War II, was it really about good versus evil, or was it basically about one team won and the other team lost? And then what was that's really how you define progressive versus liberal, or conservative. It's about who wins and who loses, at the end of the day. And so that got me thinking about this topic as well, as far as we like to formulate ideologies in a way that puts like a positive spin on them, but at the end of the day, you know, does it really matter? It's about outcomes more so than it is about how good your ideology is. And there are people who certainly live by an ideology, regardless of what people think about it. So that's kind of what I think about when it comes to these things. But how about you? When it comes to that idea of, and just before I go on, Eric, he asked the question of you: do you consider yourself as an iconoclast? Again, that idea of someone who kind of really goes against the grain, who's doesn't want to be defined by like a fixed set of ideas or culture or what have you. Is that what you would
I
you
will say
label
no
yourself?
because I do accept my culture as part of me, but I don't. I accept my history of my culture a part of me, like the ancient Greeks, the Zeus, the Alexander the Great, all that stuff. It helps me understand who I am, who I come from. But the modern Greek, the I don't even say modern Greek, is more the Greek that our parents want us to be. I'm not that. I stay away from that
Mhm.
because if I stay the way they wanted to, I wouldn't be on YouTube, for example. I wouldn't be having an iPhone. I'll have a flip phone if I'm with them.
Mhm.
So it was just one of those things. Like I disagreed a lot of things they say, and
Mhm.
some things as I got older, I changed my opinions and I agree on it. Um, like for example, I'm like, a lot of people were having kids outside of marriage when I was coming up. I disagreed with that personally, and I know you do too.
Mm,
So I stayed to a course. This is
mm,
why at 40 I'm still single and no kids, because I did not want to be outside of marriage of that.
mhm. But
Ideally, go ahead.
go ahead. No, you go ahead. Finish your point. Finish your point.
Ideally, who I am does not define where you come from. It defines who the man you want to become.
Mhm,
I know a couple movies have said that in the past, and life sucks. Things are gonna happen in your life. It kind of molds you who you become over time. Sometimes it makes you very tough. Sometimes it makes you very soft. Sometimes you're in the middle. I would say at this point in my life, I became who I can't became because of the challenge that's put in front of me.
mhm.
Call it God testing me, call it destiny, call it faith, call it whatever you want. But I became the man, And same thing with you, Paul. When you have this conversation a lot of time, I'm like, the way you told me your backstory, you came out pretty fine overall. You could have came out more fucked up than anybody after
Oh,
everything you've been through,
100%. Yeah. Yeah.
but you came out pretty fine. Doesn't mean I have to agree with everything you're saying,
Mhm.
but I respect what you're saying.
Yeah.
I think that what makes us unique. Understanding where people are coming from and respecting that,
Mhm,
and trying to understand that versus pushing back, pushing back, pushing back. And I was that kind of person. If I
mhm.
didn't agree with it back when I was in my early 20s, I pushed back. No, you have to see my way and only my way.
Yeah.
As I got older, like, yeah, I was a little bit of an asshole back then. Well,
Mhm.
I'm still technically an asshole, but a different kind of asshole now. But
Yeah.
the pushback didn't help.
Right.
What did help is being a understanding person. Like, accept me screaming, yelling, and you didn't follow, X, Y, Z, whatever. You sit down and talked. I'm like, now, okay, I understand where you go fuck yourself. I swear to God, I'm coming to UK. I'm gonna shove my fucking Second Amendment right up your ass.
He's got he's got a whole ocean. He's like, I got a whole ocean separating me and you. So he's definitely taking shots from across the pond for sure.
I'm gonna get him. Don't worry.
Mhm. Yeah.
But you hear this all the time. What what defines us as men in our culture? I think we need to stop thinking about defending us as men and culture. Just have it separate. Defend ourselves as men only.
Mhm,
You still can use your cultures. Like, yeah, I'm very proud of it. You guys
mhm,
know I'm very proud of being Greek.
mhm.
At one
Right.
point, I didn't,
Right.
because I was a black sheep.
Right. But I guess the question then would be, can you have a society of black sheep? Right.
Yes.
I don't know if you can. This is, I guess, if I had to push back, especially when people talk about progressive, this sense of individuality versus culture or what have you. I don't know if society can run. I mean, just look at history. I mean, you study Greek history, you
Mhm.
know that, and there's a lot of, again, cultural norm. I mean, people were mobilized to think a certain way, to act in certain ways, good and bad. But can you build a society? Could you have built the great dynasties, regardless of the culture, Asian dynasties, Greek dynasties, Roman, African, whatever, without this group think, if you will? Because think about it. I mean, people sacrifice their time, their treasure, a lot of times their lives in the building of things, of structures, governments, resources. I don't know if you can get there if you have a society that's undefined. Yeah, and Lord of the Flies is a perfect example. We read this in shout out to Eric, Highland Park High School. We had to read this in Mr. Bailey's class, I'm sure. But the whole book, I don't know if you ever are you familiar with the Lord of the Flies? Have you ever read that?
No,
It's
I never
it's one
heard
of
of it,
those
to be honest with you.
classics that you'll read in in English lit class. So basically, you had the movie was about, well, the original, because I know there was a remake that didn't go over as well because they used Americans instead of Brits. But Craig might be familiar with this. But the idea was you had these British boys, in Britain. They have this idea of boarding schools. So they have, again, these very proper kids, and they land on an island. And you start to see, because there's no structure, because there's no culture, you start to see the individuals start to regress to more instinctual, in some ways more savage ways of doing things. Here you had these very proper British boys, and they started to paint, especially a lot of the leadership there. They started to paint themselves like in war paint and things. You had the one kid who was trying to be, I guess, more the reasonable one, was sort of ostracized from the society, and he became a target of these boys, because you had this one guy, this main leader, and I think the guy who was like sort of like the reasonable one, I think his name was Jack. But there was a lot of boys. You had nerdy kids and whatnot, but you had these kind of bullies, or kids who maybe came from proper, but they had a bullying nature to them. And he was able to mobilize these other boys to sort of follow sort of in this pack mentality. He became the alpha, and they started taking on, again, these very kind of savage type of mindsets, to where at the end they were actually chasing the boy at the end. But at the last minute, I think you had a boat or something that came, and they finally found the boys and rescued them. But just when the guys come out of the and I remember this from the movie, when the soldiers, I guess the guys, came out and saw the boys, and you saw these boys in this tribal makeup and garb and whatnot. It's like, what happened to you guys? So it's to me, this idea that you can have a society full of individuals. It's very hard to build a culture or anything that lasts. So if you talk about dynasties that last, Greek, how long did the Greek Empire go on for? The Romans, or pick any of these empires. Can that endure over time if you don't have a culture that is defined, that people adhere to, and that you conform to? But if everyone's an individual, I don't see how stuff gets done. Where's the cooperation going to come from? Where is the dynamic, especially when it comes about you're willing to put something that's bigger and above yourself? When is that how is that going to come across? So, but I think society as a balance, I think there's a minority in society that certainly, the artisans, the philosophers, the poets, those who can think independently and think outside of the culture. I think it's good to have those people. I just don't know if you can have a majority of those people, because again, you're not going to get anything done long term. And then they're saying, even now with the society now, it's like, we talked about this in the last show, this idea of freedom. At the end of the day, is freedom helping to advance the culture? Or are we going towards this sort of bohemian, do what you want, whatever you want, with who you want, no rules, no borders, you just do whatever? Can a society survive when you have that kind of disjointed or individualistic mindset? As much as America talks about rugged individualism, it really is not. And that's also gets into this idea of, again, we talk about conservative versus liberal or progressive or whatever. It's still ideology, and you have to contend with that. But just some of the comments that came through, yes, Lord of the Flies, definitely our guy, our pain. Again, happy New Year to you. Definitely something worth watching, and so certainly, definitely one of the top 5 books. Yeah, so you bring it all back. Yeah, Piggy sees the coach, the conch as a purpose for rescue for the community. Ralph sees it as a plaything. Yeah, so definitely 600 years for the Rome, 1,000 years, 1,100 years for the Greeks. So there's certainly both of these things are You said both fell due to lack of borders. The Vigisaws came in unchecked. Poor Roman rulers. No money due to social programs. So again, here we get into some philosophy over certain things. And again, shout out to Hans Gruber, 1988. Great movie and great villain, by the way. So I appreciate the reference there. But yeah. So what are your thoughts on that? So like I said, I appreciate, especially in my younger years, being able to have this sort of individual mentality. But again, when you have a family, when you have things to protect, you want some sort of social assurances that what you're doing or what you're trying to build or what you want to last, you don't want your efforts. You put 18, 20, 25 years into raising these kids. You want them to have something that goes beyond you at the end of the day. And that's, I think, when you talk about culture and values, those things become more important. But you as the individual, like you, Pete, as an individual, I get it that you want to be this, this independent. But what are you going to hang on to? I guess at the end of the day, is a question when it comes to this. So, what are your thoughts on that?
It's funny because if you asked me about 20 years ago, I would have told you I want to be unique, special, different, outlaw, a rebel, black sheep, black cow, whatever you want to call me. All right.
Mhm.
But now, because as time matured me and I got older, I realized, yes, the Greek culture is part of me, but I can be different at the same time. I use my Greek culture as a stepping stone, but as I'm building on to that, I can add whatever pieces I want to myself. Can that make sense?
In a bubble, yes. Like I said, it makes sense and that's the test of any of these objects, whether you want to do like a cultural values or conservative, if you want to use that versus progressive, everything sounds great in a bubble, in isolation. But when you try to implement this stuff, to me, that's where it gets more complicated. So it's like the whole idea, like communism versus capitalism, for example.
That's another
We've
example.
never had either, right? We've never had it. Like communism in its form or definition has never existed. You've had socialism, but you've never really had communism. So, but you had the communist philosophers and whatnot, and this society of the workmen, having division of the resources. But again, in most cases, even if you want to call yourself a communist, you're not, because again, if the government has control over the natural resources of the country, that's not communism. At least not how it's classically defined. Likewise, in capitalism, this idea of laissez-faire economics, free markets, invisible hand, that's really never been implemented. More times than not, just like with Lord of the Flies, you have power always being consolidated. So whether you want to look at capitalism or communism, however you want to define those things, at the end of the day, it's the majority of the resources in the hands of a few powerful people. And the masses of the people are kind of either blocked or iced out of where the great wealth and resources are. Very little control. So it's either going to be controlled by corporations or it's going to be controlled by governments. Now we can debate, like so me and you will debate communism. In fact, I've been in several conversations with people. Oh, communism was better, capitalism was better. Look at this system, look at that system, whatever. But we're fighting over the scraps at the end. The corporations and the governments, they're the ones who really are running things. So why are we even talking about this idea of communism versus capitalism? Because it really doesn't, in the grand scheme of things, it feels at the end of we're kind of pawns at the end of the day. We're not, it really in control a lot of times in terms of what goes on in the culture, in the society. So again, the same thing with this idea of cultural values or progressive ideas. Again, we're asking the question, where are we going with a lot of these things. What's the end goal in mind? Has it ever been uh um an ideal, or is it just something that we just like to kind of throw around, but it doesn't lead us anywhere that's uh um that's lasting. Now there were a couple comments that were made. So Eric talks about the Renaissance period. It was a great period of time. Well, it depends on how you define it, because there was also a tumultuous period of time. You did have ways of thinking, modern scientific thought, the arts, the cultures, and whatnot. But a lot of people suffered during that time too.
I
For
would say personally,
yeah,
it is like as a history puff, great part of history. But if y'all lived through the time, that was a
yeah,
dark time to live in. It was a
Black
very dark
Death. You had plagues, you had wars. All those wars, and even Gruber talked about the idea of the church for 1,000 years. Again, that was a bloody time, because again, you had a lot of the splitting of the church, the Catholics versus the Protestants versus all of these different entities. There was a lot of wars during that time, church wars during that time.
Mhm.
So again, I don't know if the church has ever been this panacea, this community that exists. I mean, we got how many different versions of Christianity now? We got thousands of different versions of it at this point. So I don't know if we've ever been, but even the scriptures, not to get too religious on it, but even the scriptures, there was division in the early church then between the Jewish Christians and the non-Jewish Christians and whatnot. There's always been this sort of divide, and it's always been the idea that we're right and you're wrong, and you have to do kind of what we say. You have to interpret your Christianity the way we want you to do it. And if you don't do it that way, then you're the outcast. You're an anathema. You either get burnt, you either convert,
I'll
or you
give you an
get burnt
example,
at the
Paul.
stake, or what have you.
Like I watched a documentary today. It was when the first Christianity Vikings. Do you know how that became? Any chance?
No.
So they were fighting over a land, Vikings and non-Vikings. So it was over religion at the point. They were, one of pagans were Christianity. One of the Vikings says, "Listen, let's stop fighting. Let's convert to Christianity and stop arguing about this and killing people for no reason." It worked for a couple years till the king's son became old enough to kill the king, and he was a Viking, obviously, and he became, and that's how he became. Think of the circle now. I'm talking about killing after killing after killing after killing. That's how it was back then.
Yeah.
And to definitely the kings, like it was 2 ways to get in power, become the king. He dies in some shape or way, dies in natural causes or battle, or his own son takes him out. Great way to go, right? Imagine you're a father. Imagine your daughter is trying to one of your daughters is trying to take you out.
Yeah. A lot of stuff happened. Yet this comment from again the Zinger Slinger, pre-Catholics killed off the Gnostic Christians amongst others. Yeah, I mean there was a lot of, there was some bloody times. So again, the idea of we have to start asking ourselves some questions when you talk about this idea of morality, how that's been implemented, how that's been enforced, and how many governments, in the name of a moral entity or in the name of God, how many wars have been fought or people's been taken out for the righteous cause, the Crusades and these other things that have gone on, or defining this idea of religious, we fight on the side of God or what have you. And I ask myself, it's like, is this really, is this really, are these things really true? Or are we simply using the tool or the language of morality or values or culture to then justify acts that in many ways go against the ideas of the religion itself? And we're seeing again a very dynamic chat that's going on. Again, we appreciate you guys, some new guys who've been here. Religion Society's ground morality and God, secular ground morality and human opinion. That's very true. But here you have Kicks 92 asked the question, which killed more people, religion or humanism? That's a question. Craig comes in, billions have been died in the name of God. So definitely there's a lot of, when we talk about, like I said, at the end of the day, it's what outcome do you want? So whether you want to say it's in the name of God or in the name of secular humanism or what
Here's the
have
thing,
you,
Paul. You're a history buff like myself.
yeah.
Back in those times, killing for God was okay. You had the night temples. They were priests, trained as knights, and they said killing under the name of God was okay. It was not a sin. Obviously, we know now it is a sin still, no matter what. It doesn't matter how you do it. Cut it.
Mhm,
Cut the
mhm,
apple.
right.
But the point is trying to get to is the comment is saying, but a lot of people died under the name of God. Yes, they have a lot of people died under that.
Mhm,
It doesn't matter which side of the fence if you were Christian or against Christianity or whatever. But a lot of people have died for stupid causes.
mhm,
Look at Moses and the Egyptians. A lot of Egyptians died for the name of God. And obviously, we know the story. God took most of them out, but again, it was under His command.
mhm,
Again, but this could have prevented it if they just freed the people. But again,
mhm,
the point I'm trying to get to is back then it was so different times.
mhm,
But everybody was in line.
mhm,
There was no stepping out of line. And like, okay, the wife did the wife thing, the husband did the husband thing, the son did a son thing, daughter did a daughter thing, and you had your farm, or you were a knight, or whatever the case was.
mhm. Yeah,
Everybody was in line.
yeah. Man
Now,
drops a comment. He says that's what we call all religions are cults. So I know he has a different, definitive view of things like that. But yeah, but this is again, and you can weigh in. I mean, we can count numbers again. Hans, again, appreciate your comment. Again, humans kill more people. Atheists in the 1900s kill hundreds of millions. Mao, Stalin, all these folks, all true. But again, you had guys who came in before then. Like I said, all those wars during the Renaissance period in the 1500s, after the great split of the church, the Crusades, all that. You can't throw out that history. Also, I mean, those things have also been there, and even for these people who you could say that they're atheists, but in a lot of ways they became their own gods. Well, they all had their kind of god complex, where again the idea of morality, that they thought that their way of doing things was right, regardless if you want to derive that sense of morality from a religion or you want to define that from a humanistic point of view. Again, we're still talking about outcomes, and if the outcomes are going to be relative suffering for the people, then again, I don't know, if we can continue to have these conversations about, again, progressive versus liberal or conservative or what have you. But I did want to share this though, because I keep talking about this idea of outcomes and really where I think a lot of this conversation is going. So I kind of had this little snippet that I got from an article. That when we talk about these ideas of, again, progressive versus conservative, like what are the main areas of concern that we're dealing with? So we talk about care versus harm, fairness versus cheating, liberty versus oppression, loyalty versus betrayal, authority versus subversion, sanctity versus degradation, right? So I think both of these sort of ideas, whether it be progressivism or conservatism, whatever, I think all of these guys try to take some of these things on. It's just a matter of, to what degree or what solution do you think you can get to these aims? So I think a progressive may say that they care about, caring for the least, or caring for those who might be disenfranchised, or having fairness, that whether you're rich or poor, black or white, or what have you, everybody should kind of have an equal, there should be an equal level playing field. Again, liberty to do things, but again, to what degree? Should you be free to have like a bohemian lifestyle in the society? Or at what point do having rules or culture, at what point does that get oppressive? At some point where you limit freedoms within the society. Loyalty versus trust. This is big because you have a lot of people who are very loyal, or but it's really not about loyalty. A lot of it's about fealty, because loyalty typically is a two-way street, right? We trust people, and and those people expect things from us, but do we get things from them? Oftentimes loyalty is a one-way street. Authority versus aversion. Again, there's people who we trust to run things, to have, we give empower. Certainly in this country, we have political system where we empower people who we vote for to implement what we think is good for the society. But again, whether the leaders will do that or not, or if we decide to speak out against certain things, and again, is that speaking out? So you talk about being different, Peter, or speaking out against something. At what point does the authority allow you to say what you want to say, or wants to put down what you're doing? And then the idea of, are there things that are sacred? Sanctity versus degradation of things. Are there certain things in society that we should look at as sacred, or sanctified, or should anything? Is burning the flag, is that a form of degradation, or is that an act of liberty to do what you want to be able to do?
You really want my opinion on burning the flag?
I'm just, not necessarily your opinion, but again, the idea of, because again, we can disagree over, we can take a topic and we can agree or disagree on a variety of issues.
So I'll be honest,
but what I'm thinking about more so is aims. Like, what is, whether or not you're have progressive ideas or conservative, more cultural, traditional ideals. At the end of the day, what are you most concerned with at the end of the day? So go ahead and finish your point, though.
Like with the, let's use a flag for a second here. Like, you burn the flag. I know I'm a little extremist when it comes to a flag, any flag. I don't care if it's American, Greek, Puerto Rican, African. I don't care what kind of flag. If you're talking about burning a flag, I think it should be across the board, any country you are. It should be that death sentence right there on the spot, to be honest with you, because we need to have some limits as human beings. And like, what can we do or not? I might be the black sheep of my family, but I still have my limits. How far I'm going to push things.
But even in your response, so you think that's a capital offense?
Absolutely.
Right? So again, is that again, we talk about liberty versus oppression, right? So again, is that an oppressive act or a subversive act where a person, we talk about First Amendment in this country. Does a person have the right, even though you can totally disagree with a person's choice or decision to make? But again, is that an extreme too far? Where people, it's like, if you burn the flag, especially if they're doing something that your country decides to do. If you were in Nazi Germany back in the 40s and you burn the German flag or the Nazi flag at that point, should you die for that, knowing what the Nazis were doing? So you just said, if it's any flag of any country, that's a capital offense. But if you burnt theirs, or what about the Stalinist Russia, or pick your country, when a country is clearly doing things that you find are immoral or go against the values of the Constitution of the country, and you do that as an act of speech or an act of protest against that, should that cost you your life? If a German citizen said this is going too far, and they wanted to burn the Nazi flag or the flag of Germany at that time, should they have been, deleted or excised for that? So again, so we can say, like I said, so we can say things in a bubble to say, oh, if you do that, it should be, off with the head or whatever. But context, I think, matters in terms of how do you deal with, especially because you're in a way, you're kind of taken for granted that the society or the culture or the state is correct or always correct. And therefore, anything that goes against the state must be incorrect. And again, you being the free thinker that you are, I would think there needs to be a space to say, hey, you know, not so fast when it comes to taking extreme action in response to something you may deem extreme, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Maybe my reply is extreme, but again, I don't do anything half-assed. You know me. So that's a difficult response for me personally, because I'm very big about being a patriot of your country. You know what I'm saying? And like the same thing I feel about the draft. I think the draft should be in effect still, like most countries. But I'm one of the unique people who thinks that, because I think a lot of problems in this country would have been avoided if the draft was still in effect, because I want a lot of responsibility, respect, and so on. But in the same token, how much is that going to help, or is that going to make things worse? Because let's be honest here, Paul. Not only here, all over this planet right now, we're actually in a bad place right now as humanity. We're not in a great place. That's my personal opinion on that. And of course, you might disagree, and that I respect that if you do. But I think we are in a very dark place as humanity right now, because a lot of things are going. Look, this is what just happened the other day. I don't want to get political, but I never saw that coming, to be honest. But we're going to that point. So how bad can things get if we're getting to that point?
Right. But this is where you start to question again, this idea of values. I mean, and me, I'm big on especially the Vietnam era. That's like a major. I was born in '69, so that period of time has always interested me. And especially when you read stuff later on in terms of what the government was doing through the '60s, regime changes and CONTELPRO and just all of these actions within the country and outside the country. And you're asking yourself the question, like with Vietnam, people were asking, well, look, what are we here for? Like, it's, you can mobilize a people into action at a point, but then at what point do you pull back and say, wait a minute, that this doesn't feel like you can say, American values, you can say tradition, you can say whatever you want, but if in your spirit, you can be like, this is wrong. Or why are we engaged in these actions? And we had a show. If you guys want to go back, look in the Gray Area catalog on the Black Man Unfiltered Network or the Sparta HQ Network, we had a show on just war theory, and we talked about basically America's track record in war since World War II, from the Korean War on. And we have to start asking ourselves, despite our vast military might and whatnot, what have been the outcomes from a lot of these campaigns that we've gone on since World War II? And the track record, in my view, it doesn't look very good. So you have to weigh these things. And I think, and really another reason why I'm a fan of that era is because I think that's where you did start to see, at least in this country. I'm sure in other countries, I'm sure in the UK, in other countries, I'm sure people have had similar conversation, that was really a splitting within families. I mean, the talk of the Vietnam War split families up. You had a show, All in the Family, back in the day, where you had Archie with Michael, and they would always butt heads because he was the draft dodging liberal progressive guy, and Archie was the conservative value type of guy, or what have you. And he had his view of the world and how things should go. But it split families up. And people really started thinking that those old time God and country values that we had. And then we started taking inventory of the things that we were doing. I mean, a lot of people rejected it out, saying, look, this is, we've been fed these things to keep us, on the side of God, to do heinous acts against people across the world. And a lot of that stuff had nothing to do with God at all, especially if you, I just saw a recent documentary on Henry Kissinger. And he, even though he was Jewish by ethnicity, he wasn't a very religious guy, but he looked at geopolitics in a way where human beings were expendable. That the idea of pushing American values or America's interests, and that's the thing also, is it about interests or is it about values? And his thing was clearly about American interests. And to heck with anybody else, if we gotta lose some people in the process, then whatever. He looked at human beings as expendable, whether it be ours or somebody else's. So again, so I think that when you look at that history, when you start looking at what America is supposed to be about, again, I can get someone again starting to ask some questions about this idea that we talk about these cultural values, and does it really mean anything at the end of the day? And so that's kind of where it is. But again, going back to the slides, I'll just bring them back up here. Again, what do you think helps us get there? Like, is it, maybe we should have the conversation, maybe let's throw out this idea of progressive versus cultural values, at least the way it's been implemented up to this point, and maybe we need to have a different conversation about, again, what is it that we want in society? What is your idea? If you're going to paint your ideal country or society or culture, what kind of systems get us to these places? Because anybody can be critical of either progressive or social values. You had, again, a guy, Hans Gruber, he talked about, again, some of the progressive tendencies or whatever, and some of the violent acts that have taken place in the country. We all know what happened around, Black Lives Matter, and we know a lot of the things that went on there, where it seems like a lot of those progressive ideas kind of went off the rails. But then we had January 6th, and that was another coming from a totally different side. So again, at the end of the day, where are we landing here? And if you believe in an ideology or not, then again, what is the best way to implement it? Some people these days, they want to do it by any means necessary. And again, a lot of progressive programs throughout history became oppressive programs. And obviously you had a lot of conservative programs were also, again, very oppressive, in their nature. So again, what would be your ideal in terms of if these are concerns to you, how we're going to get there? Whatever you want to call the ideology of the philosophy, how are you going to, how we're going to get there?
That's a question that I don't know how to answer that, Paul.
Mhm.
Because that is the question I think most of us are answering tonight. How can we get there? Because at the end of the day, me and you can have a conversation all day long. We might disagree on a few things, but we can come to agree. But how many people don't agree on nothing and they argue? I'll give you a good example. When the government shut down for, what is that, a month, was it? Nobody could agree on anything. And they were holding the government hostage. I'm not getting political here, but I'm using that as an example. How much more can you sit down and have a conversation to find ideals or ground rules? Think about it. There's always somebody not agreeing, because we're not going to agree on anything, and that's where the arguments happen and this split happens for all of us.
Mhm.
Am I making sense here?
Yeah. It's But we have to, but we, where we go, where are we going? Now again, I can in my own space, I can talk about, look, I'm a big family guy. I believe in marriage. I believe in you know uh you know traditional, if you will, families. Um, you know, husband, wife, children. But I'm also a big believer now, especially nowadays, in extended families, a multi-generational families, which may come from more, having a multi-general household. What I see from a lot of Latino communities. I'm a fan of that. I think that that really does a lot in terms of um, maintaining certain traditions, giving a sense of you know uh, a sense of loyalty, a sense of unity, but at the same time, still allowing your children to go out and to pursue their God given potential. So again, whether you're male or female, black, white, whatever your ethnicity is, whatever, I mean, you should be able to go out and through your efforts, have the opportunity in order to achieve whatever it is that that your gifts, wherever your gifts will take you. I'm not one who, and I got three daughters. I'm not one who's saying women belong in the kitchen. you know but certainly there are those elements in society, or those voices in society that says, yeah, we need to go back in the 1950s, where the woman, she basically raised the children, stayed at home, put the apron on and whatnot. So that's a sort of a mindset that people are espousing as well. you know so I have an interest in what's going to be best for the next generation that's coming up. But at the same time, so again, I do have views that are traditional, but again, I'm fairly liberal in a lot of different ways. And I think those things can coexist, but it's like people want to kind of put you into this. You got to live this way or that way. I got to go back to 1,000 years ago in terms of how to live. That there's no or society was somehow better off back in those days. But I'm not sure. I'm not sure if that's the case.
So going back to those days that the woman was in the kitchen, those days are far, far gone. They're not there anymore. And I'm okay with it, to be honest with you, because I think, if they want, equal, I'm cool with it too. Because the way, the comedy is today, yeah, we definitely need some, some middle ground with that. Because honestly, if I had a spouse and she worked, take a lot of stress off my back, to be honest with you. Like, how that is. You were a one man income at one time. You know how stressful that can be.
Mhm.
So I'm cool with that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I think somebody wants to ask a question in the chat. I saw it before, or am I
Yeah,
wrong?
if he wants to ask, so again, we got the awesome 9365. You can certainly ask your question in the chat. Now, again, we typically, as a show, we okay, so this guy has to go. Thank you very much for your question. Um, but the idea here is that you uh, I I literally just lost my train of thought right there for a minute. But that's
I think
you
you were
got it.
going to say make it. I think just leave it respectful. If you're going to be a jackass, we're just going to boot your ass.
Yeah, so we just, so we just put you out. But again, thank you for participating. Certainly in the conversation. So there you go.
So
But
really fast before we move on, because I've been
yeah,
seeing a lot of people being morons today in the chats. On all due respect, so we don't tolerate any disrespect, drama, or any other bullshit. If you're going to bring it here, just take it somewhere else. That we won't have it here, and me and Paul are on the same page with that. So you're just gonna get blocked if you want to bring that heat here. We don't want it.
mhm,
Or if
mhm.
you want to add to it, go ahead.
Yeah, and again, we typically, as a show format, every 4 weeks, every 4 shows, we do have a call-in show where people, if you again keep it respectful, as Peter said, you want to come up and talk about anything, any topic that we've talked about in the past. Go back over our playlist, and you'll see the shows and the topics that we've covered. Any questions that you may have from those, you can certainly be part of the conversation. But again, usually you have to show your face. And again, be respectful. The reason why the gray area exists is for Peter and I to have a conversation. This is a weekly conversation that we have. It's not so much debate, although we will debate on the show.
Friendly debate.
What's that? Yeah, in the proper ways. We argue, but in the sense of argument, like in law, when you go into a case, we have an argument. So Mandrell's action. When the next time we're going to have a call-in show?
The 18th.
The 18th, we're going to have a show. Now, Mandrell, you've called us out on multiple occasions, especially when we do shows dealing with military stuff, the just war, and you talk about joining the show, and you never show. So I'm going to hold you to this one. I'm going to reach out to you when that week's going to come up, and I'm going to make sure that you make it to the show so you can be part of the conversation.
I'm going to add a little salt to his wound on Mandrell right now. So stop being a little chicken shit and put your man pants on and time out. Stop. The honeymoon ended. Let's be a man and step up and you want to talk shit to our face. I love you, bro. I love you.
Talk stuff, but certainly I enjoy. He's very insightful. He's got a lot of world experience, and
he knows I'm just fucking with him anyway. Mandrell's a good guy.
Yeah, but certainly, it's always good when he's part of the conversation. So he's welcome. Mandrell has got the welcome card. He's welcome anytime. Certainly on this show. So appreciate him being part of the conversation and joining tonight. Because like I said, for all you guys, the haters, the spammers, all these guys who are out there saying stuff, we appreciate it regardless. Because again, you're kind of helping us. We rather, they said no news is bad news or whatever. So again, you being a part of the conversation or disrupt the conversation, again, you decide to spend your time there. You could have been somewhere else. So we appreciate you guys anyway, in being here. But I think just getting back to this breakdown of again, what are the ideals? So again, the left side are ideals that we deem are important. Again, caring for other people, especially those the least. Now, again, you might be an extreme to say that people say, oh, well, if you care for, you're harming people more than helping them if you care too much. Fairness. I think a lot of people can appreciate the idea of fairness, but nobody wants a handout or nobody wants an advantage.
Before we move on, I want to bring a saying that my Greek brothers and sisters always say, the older folks. I call them the ancient ones. Mm-hmm. It's an old saying. My mom used it all the time. The people who make you cry care about you, and the people who make you laugh want to hurt you. Let's just let that marinate for a minute, and you continue. We'll get back to that part.
Okay. I just want to address because you do have one R Riku. Hopefully, I'm saying that right. That might be an animation character. Just kind of give you a high level. First of all, again, appreciate you being here tonight. If you're here in earnest to be about a conversation. Again, this is a weekly conversation where we take topics. There's two types of gray area show. One is where we take topics. Just war theory, family, parenting, money, military,
and so on.
It depends. We just we come up with a series of topics, and we have a conversation on Sunday about those. Peter and I, we may agree on certain things. Guns, that was a big show that we did last year on gun rights, and we'll just talk about our personal views on that. We're not saying that we're correct. We're not saying that you have to think the way we think, but we have a conversation. And the one thing that we're really big on in this space is that we have a respectful conversation. Because, again, what we saw certainly in the YouTube space, especially last year with the elections and everything, a lot of the conversation really got out of pocket. And we wanted to have a space where people can have a robust conversation in a respectful fashion where we are adults and not insult people's character or their names or denigrate people. And so we wanted to have a space where we can have these sort of conversations in a respectful manner. So that's one part of the gray area. The other part is we've also had the privilege of interviews. So you may come in on a particular show. We've interviewed a lot of folks who are military, either current or retired from the military, because I think that military people have a lot of perspective. You've been either in theaters of war, different campaigns around the world. You've seen how other cultures exist and rock, and we like to engage with those people in terms of their not only their experiences in the military, but then also their experiences when they come out of the military. And some of these guys have gone on to different career paths. A lot of these guys have gone on to be comedians, and they use a lot of that experience from the military because they've seen the irony in the world, and they a lot of times they'll bring that up in their comedy. And so one of the questions that we'll oftentimes ask them is, what is their gray area? Because you can go in, you might be 18 and go into the military, and once you've seen a few things and see how the world really operates and what's really going on, that can change your perspective because you might have went in with a very black and white ideology. Again, America is on the side of right, and everybody else is anti God or whatever. And you may come out with a totally different philosophy, or it may bolster your belief in God, or it may turn off your belief in God altogether because you might think it's all BS, like Mandrell was saying earlier. So again, we like to get those perspectives from people. So that's really the theme of the show, the thrust of the show. Every week is a different topic, but again, every fourth show we have a call in where people, if you wanted to chop, now we may have a topic that we may discuss during the show until people decide to come up, but then we want to have certainly we give people an opportunity to either respond to some of the things that we're talking about or participate in the conversation that we're having. But again, the idea that the principal goal, again, respectful conversation. Let's treat each other like adults. Let's respect opinions. You don't have to agree with those opinions, but let's respect people and their opinions and allow for a healthy exchange. And and we have people who tune into us every week, which again, I can't tell you how much that does for us, because again, and we know people got to go to work on Monday, and so the fact that you'll spend 2 hours chopping it up with us, we appreciate that, and certainly being supporters of this network, either Black Man Unfiltered Network or Sparta HQ Network, we take it all in. So that's really the thrust of the show. But again, we thank you guys for for being a part of it, and we respect all of you. So you're saying there's you're not a believer in God. We respect that here. I certainly both Peter and I are believers, but certainly we respect those who don't, or you have a different religion or philosophy altogether. All of that is kind of welcome conversation, and so so that's really the thrust of the conversation. But just getting back to the topic at hand. So again, we have, I think, these ideals, which I think are on the left, but then they can regress to these ideas on the right very quickly, depending on ultimately who's in power, right? So again, liberty versus oppression. It's always the ones who are oppressed want to be liberated, but then do the liberators become the oppressors at the end of the day? Like this country, right? That the story that we've been told is that people fled England because of religious persecution, and they came to the United States for religious freedom. Now, again, was that freedom then applied equally to those who were already here and for those who came after them here? Again, that's oftentimes the dichotomy that happens, right? Again, everybody wants loyalty, but would you give loyalty in return? Because again, loyalty is a two-way street. More times than not, you see, especially with leaders and dictators and different people, they don't want loyalty. They want fealty. You can do 99% align with somebody when it comes to their views. If you disagree one time, they cut you off. That's an insecurity there. So again, it's not about loyalty. It's about fealty to somebody. Again, authority. I think we do need authority in this country. I think you should respect police officers and those and teachers and parents and those who are judges and those who've been tasked with running the society. I think having a structure is helpful and useful in society. But when that authority becomes, again, oppressive, when it becomes subversive, where it says that you don't have a voice, and that can be either as a parent. I mean, yes, I mean, parents, I think, should have authority to raise their kids. But at what point does that become destructive to the kid when you're too heavy handed? When you said, no, it's my way or the highway, and you don't like my rules, either get out or you're abusive or what have you. When does it become subversive? And again, if you value certain things in society, culturally, in the culture or in families or whatnot, when does it become, again, um, the idea, like I said, burning the American flag? You may think that of that is something that's, that's a degradation of something that's important to the country, but then at the same time, is like, is the flag at the end of the day, how important is that? So everybody, so again, you have these ideals that can get very destructive, and you can cite at some points in time where, whether you're a conservative or progressive or what have you, that it ran off the wheels and it got out of hand. And people are asking, it's like, we can have these debates, but at the end of the day, it's about outcomes. What is best for society? So I think there's certain ideas that had to be progressive. But I'm not opposed to having some values. Now, again, whether you want to base those values on a religion or not, which I don't always think is necessary. Again, a lot of people get on me for this. I'm a religious person, but I don't think necessarily you need religion to have values. I don't believe that. I know a lot of atheists or agnostic people who are very moral, and they don't go to church, and they don't, throw the Bible at you or whatever, but they're just in their way of living and doing things. At the very least, it aligns with what I believe in terms of, my religious values. So again, I'm not saying that that's necessary, that, that's very different from saying, well, this needs to be a Christian nation, which I don't ever believe it was. That's another story. Um, but it has to be. I think these are things that we're debating, or we're arguing over, progressive versus conservative. But where are we trying to get to? And I think these are really the issues at hand that we have to talk about. So, Peter, I know I long stroked it for a minute, but you can certainly chime in here. But just before I go, and just shout out to again, one of our loyal guys, again, Braxton, Snake Eyes 24. Good to have you in the chat tonight. Always a pleasure, having you on. So you go ahead, B.
Oh, where do I start? Because you put a lot on my plate right now.
I'm always long stroking. You know that.
Pause.
You had to see, Black Man. See, thanks. You see what you created. See, BME started that a while ago. So again, you see how it's impacting other people on the platform. So thank you very much, BMU, for getting that whole thing started.
He's probably laughing his ass off right now, and I don't care. More knowing him. All seriously aside, you need to start somewhere to build something, whatever that is. If you have no idea what you're building, like I said, 20 years ago, I was like, fuck that shit. I don't need that shit. I can build my own shit. No. If you don't have something to the groundwork, the foundation, that's how you build a house, right? Foundation. Same thing with anything, cultures, societies, anything. They need some type of foundation and build up from that. Like, one thing I do respect about, like, a monarchy, for example, is a foundation there. It's everybody's in their place doing what they need to do.
Mm-hmm.
But they also have their right to say what they need to say too, as a part of the monarchy.
Mm-hmm.
And the same thing with the generals who work for the monarchy. They have meetings with the monarchy, the kings, the queens, or whatever. But it goes off that. Think what you're saying and go off it. Slowly build off that.
Yeah.
I'm not saying you shouldn't have an opinion. You should have an opinion.
Right.
And I literally had this conversation with Greg last night after our show. Where he lives, he has no rights right now.
Mhm.
There is no freedom of speech. There's no nothing. The devil said, he has said, get up. And that's not a way to live.
Mhm.
Versus here, at least we can give our opinions. We might not like it, but we still can give our opinions.
Right. Well, it's interesting because you talk about Craig from the UK. Now, from at least from our vantage point perspective, UK is supposed to be a relatively progressive place in terms of ideology, rights for people, for women, for what have you. Um, but again, there's certain voices that are not tolerated there. So anything that might be looked at as maybe conservative, maybe looked at as regressive or toxic. That's another word that's been sort of tossed around in recent years. But again, is that so? Again, the idea of a progressive society, but will not tolerate voices that go against that. Again, is that society then no longer progressive? It's progressive if your ideology aligns with ours. I mean, that's another thing that where I think a lot of this conversation again, we're arguing over these terms, but again, the idea of freedom to be able to say what you want to say or have a different point of view without being punished for it or ostracized or canceled because of it, one way or the other. I think both, whether it be liberal or conservative or progressive versus conservative, I think both are sometimes guilty of that in terms of that idea. So again, a lot of these discussions that we're having, I think a lot of it comes down to again, who has the power, who has the influence, who has the idea. Now, again, as one thing, I'm going to go back and read a comment from Niels Mall 6085 says it doesn't even need to be discussed. It is innate, like the idea of a higher power. Everyone knows about respectful behavior. They choose otherwise and excuse themselves. But to me, that's a dichotomy statement in and of itself, because if we know these things, but it's not innate in us to practice these things. So again, so whether you're conservative, whether you're progressive, or what have you, you say we have this innate idea of that we believe in this higher power, but it has a lot of times it has very little impact on our behaviors and how we do things unless it's enforced in certain ways or we're indoctrinated in certain ways. We may have this innate, and again, just from scripture, it talks about that everyone is moral or has this idea of this sense of a creator, whether you want to acknowledge that or not. But we don't follow these things. We do things that go contrary to that. We don't respect people generally in terms of what we say. And again, we saw a lot of that disrespect in these platforms over the past couple of years. And so, so as much as we, it's an ideal, I may not disagree with the first part of what you said, but we don't implement it very well. And however you want to dress it up, you want to dress it up through religion or declaration of a name that you want to give to God or what have you, however you want to phrase it. We still have a hard time with trying to implement this in a way that gives us the sort of society that we want. And to me, that's, again, where a lot of this discussion intimately goes up. We constantly have this back and forth discussion, but I don't think we necessarily go anywhere with it because, again, everybody winds up, it becomes almost circular, in its argumentation. So again, a lot of times it's about, again, who has the power dynamic and who doesn't. And that's really, the way I see it. But Pete, your thoughts on that?
What's greater power, at least from how I always learned the Bible and everything like that, I don't want to get too religious, is you still have the freedom of making your own choices. So if the Bible tells you don't do X, Y, and Z, and you still do the opposite, nobody's stopping you. You have free will to do whatever you want. I always looked at the Bible as a guideline to life. I recommend you're not doing something, but it doesn't mean you're going to do it. We all know that. We all, people do stupid shit all the time. Like it says, don't get drunk. I I drink. I get drunk. Doesn't mean I'm going to follow every rule in the Bible. And I bet Paul doesn't follow every single rule in the Bible either. Right, Paul?
Well, hopefully not, because not all those rules apply. I don't think I should go around, executing people. You know,
I'm not saying that. What am I saying?
right.
Saying, I'm like, okay, I know you don't drink, but you know, it is probably a rule in there.
No,
or
there
something
isn't.
that you don't
There
follow.
isn't. I just choose. Well, you shouldn't be drunk, but I'm not opposed to drink. I mean, I don't drink. You know, I'm a lifetime teetotaler, so I don't drink at all for personal reasons. My dad, and just seeing how that was, and it's just something that I just never made a part of my life. But I've never told anybody. I've taught Sunday school and talked about, I mean, there's no prohibition against drinking, but when you drink to excess where your behavior and your actions become destructive or dangerous, then that's probably not a cool place to be in. But I don't even need religion to even reinforce that, right? I mean,
Yeah,
you should be able to
I know
see
that's a
that
pretty
in
bad
the
example, but I'm using that as an example.
I got you.
But like I said, there are rules in there, like you know, premarital sex, for example. I know me and you see different views on that. Again, there are rules, and then you don't have to follow all of them.
Right.
You have freedom of will. Like my priest even said, like you guys all know, and if you don't know yet, about almost a month ago, my pup died. So I'm getting a memorial tattoo for him. Technically, I'm not supposed to get tattoos as Christians.
Mhm.
But again, my priest said, I don't recommend you doing it, but you have the freedom of will to do whatever you want. I can't stop you.
Mhm.
Nobody can stop you. And that's a beauty about, at least in Orthodox. I'm pretty sure the same thing with you, Paul.
Mhm.
You can do whatever you want in a day as Christians.
Well, I think again, the way now, again, some people are more dogmatic, again, depending on the denomination or the views or whatever. Some people are very dogmatic about certain things. I think I like the way Paul talks about it. It's like you can do anything that you want, but the question that you got to ask yourself at the end of the day, and this kind of aligns with our conversation, is it beneficial? Right? Yeah, I have freedom. Right? I don't have to, I'm not restricted from eating certain foods or doing things on certain days. I don't have to observe a Sabbath like back in the day. I have certain freedoms. But how I use those freedoms matters. Do those freedoms does it really benefit me? Does it benefit other people? So I think that, to me, that's a better way of looking at things. And again, when we come to this conversation about progressive versus, conservative, like I said, to me, this is not about parties. And I think that I think we're all kind of, um, sort of have fallen for the speech about, what the political parties want to teach us about how to think about certain things. Is this helping us or hurting us individually and as a society? So I think, I want prohibitions. I don't think there should be a prohibition against someone deciding to have sex with somebody. But I'm still going to have the conversation with them. Is it helping you? Is having randoms, is that helping you? Or is that putting you in a space that's dangerous?
I'll be honest with you, Paul. If you asked me about 10 years ago, I would say, I just want my pee-pee wet. That's all I cared about. Now, about when I hit my 30, 30 and above, even more now. No, it doesn't benefit you just getting hooking up. It is pointless.
And that's the thing, too, with this conversation. A lot of it depends on where you are in life.
Of course.
Where you are at 18, at 28, 38. I'm 56 years old. And so, at my age, I may have different values and priorities. But like I said, at the same time, I have daughters who are in their 20s. So again, I care about the world that they're in. I care about, seeing that is there something of benefit that that I have or knowledge that I have that will help them in the future. Is that a value that is useful to them in terms of their long-term success. I recognize that, because I'm not one of these guys who goes around talking about, well, back in my day we did this and that. I don't think that's a very useful conversation these days.
I can see
Because
you doing that too, actually.
what's that?
I can see you doing that
No,
actually. For some reason.
honestly I don't.
I know you don't, but I can see you doing that one
Yeah,
point in your life.
because again, and I can look back over my time and see that, look, we weren't, everyone's going to frame their history in the most pleasant of terms, right? We had the best times in the 90s or whatnot, or some generation always wants to criticize the next generation for their music or whatever. Like, since the 20s, every generation's music has been called demonic or something. Oh, the waltz was going to be the degradation of society, or jazz was going to be the degradation of society. Rock and roll was the degradation of society. Rap was the degradation of society. Now we're at a point where, okay, people are still, it's still going on. Even though I can go back in time and look at different times, like people talk about how morbid things are in certainly in the African American community, but a lot of guys saying this stuff, they went to Freaknik back in the 90s, which was a debaucherous time back in the day. But now you become this sort of this conservative family values type of guy when you was rocking it at Freaknik back in the day. So again, so everybody's
metal,
gonna
bro. Like,
yeah.
Metal. Like, I remember when I started listening to metal, that was demonic. It's the Satan's music. You shouldn't listen to that. Oh, they're throwing holy water. I mean, they're trying to, all this stuff. And like, it's just music, guys. It's not a big deal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so right, so you've always had those kind of you've always had those sort of cultural um clashes, if you will, in terms of, again, the sometimes the older society or the society that's in charge, looking to always try to influence. So again, at the end of the day, conservative, progressive, at the end of the day, is it really simply about power, about having power, having control, having influence over others. But I'm still going to ask the question, regardless of where you fall on either side of the aisle, what is useful? What is beneficial? So, like I said, I think waiting before you have to get married, before having children, is useful. I'm not going to beat it down your head or whatever. I mean, if you choose to, to do that, I'm just saying I think it's useful. I think especially if you're playing the long game. In the moment, you may say, hey, this is the right thing to do, but long term, is it useful? I think having a mom and dad in the house at the same time, raising kids together, and keeping a decent marriage together, I think that has benefits that I see in my kids. And contrasting that to other, that doesn't mean that if you grow up in a single family household or single parent household, you can't be successful. I'm not saying that at all, but I just think it's useful to have that kind of environment, having the same general religious beliefs. I'm not saying, look, if you're Baptist and Orthodox in the same house or whatever, some people make a big deal about that, or to say, you can't marry someone who's not, baptized into the Orthodox Church or whatever. But again, if you have generally the same values, I think, again, that's useful in creating that type of environment that allows you to raise children. But if your values are so different and creates confusion for the kids, in fact, we did a show on that. Again, for those who listen first time, go back. We did a show on interreligious marriages, interfaith marriages. Go back and look at that and look at that show. And we talked about that, how a lot of kids who grow up in these sort of interfaith homes, more times than not, they grow up with no religion at all. That doesn't mean that they're bad people. That doesn't mean that they're that they don't have values that they probably picked up from either one of their parents. But they basically kind of make a deal to say, look, Christian, Jewish, whatever. It's They don't necessarily adopt one or the other. But I think it's useful when you have it. Now, again, person's going to grow up. You're going to make your own decisions, whether or not you want to still follow the stuff or discard it or go a totally different direction. That's up to you. So again, I think the idea of usefulness, does it benefit me in the immediate time and in the long run? I think that's useful. But again, family. I think that's really for me where if I was going to plant my flag somewhere, it would probably be that. Essentially, my nephew came by on New Year's Day, and there's a spot up in Massachusetts, Martha's Vineyard, and there's a particular place, Ocean Grove, and certainly if you're Black, you understand that is a very popular destination for a lot of Black people to go, especially in the summertime. Like in August, it's like imagine going to a beach and everybody on the beach is Black. Not only just Black, but highly educated Black, very upper crustic, upper class. You see a lot of Black excellence in that space, the whole area. I mean, if you go to Jersey Shore at any time, yes, you'll see all kinds of people on the beach. But imagine going to a place where you got doctors and lawyers and politicians and writers and poets and all these different people in one area. And he showed me this documentary on the history of that place in Martha's Vineyard, and it talked about the familial legacies that people got land, they bought a house there in the 1920s or something, and the parents have been coming back, or the families or the cousins, and how they grew up there and they saw the success and inspired them to be, again, doctors and scientists and engineers and all these different people. And again, it was a beautiful exposition of the history and the culture of that place. And in fact, certainly it's been, I was there once back a few years ago. My niece, she got married there a few years ago, and I haven't been back, and I'm thinking about possibly going back in the near future. But the one thing that I started thinking about was this isn't going to last very long, or it's not going to continue to last because Black people aren't really getting married at levels of other cultures and ethnicities. Like the reason why they said it was such a fun time, like for the people who were in the piece, and they talk about, yeah, when I was there and all my cousins were there and these families were there, and my grandfather met his wife there and they got married there and they brought their kids back there. That's family. Like no other we talk about, culture and society. I think no society can really last without that. So until Black people, were a lot of these people, again, highly educated. In fact, he was telling me last time he was up there, it's like 70% women up there that are unmarried. They're smart, they're educated, they have careers, they have, all these things going on. The sororities go up there, the AKAs go up there. It's like all success. But I'm like, where the families? Where are the husbands? Where's the kids? And so if that doesn't get fixed, this legacy that you talked about that's going on for like 100 years, is it going to continue? And just like in African American communities, look at your family reunions. Go back 50 years ago in the 70s and 80s and talk to your kinfolk about the size of those family reunions back in the day, and then look at them now. And you tell me, are they the same size? Are they well attended? We used to have hundreds. Now you're lucky if you get 50 people together. Why? Because again, people aren't marrying. So I think any society that lasts, I think family's got to be at the center of that. And I think with family, there's certain values that enable those families to thrive and that you can raise a generation in. I talked about another experience where I went to a party My daughter's one of her best friends is from Sierra Leone, and it was a cultural scene. I saw it. It was very different from an African American experience. A lot of cousins there. But then I remember being at the table with them and I was asking them, "Hey, when are you guys getting married?" And they all shook their heads, like all these girls, like dozens of girls there's like, "No, I'm not getting married anytime soon. Maybe 30
See,
or whatever I'll get married."
I
But
hear a lot of that. Like people don't want to get married anymore. And somebody told me this once before. I didn't click at the time, but it clicks now. Marriage is not a contract; it's a sacrifice. And a husband is not a ruler; it's a responsibility before God.
mhm,
Didn't make any sense back then.
mhm,
I looked at him like, what the fuck are you talking about? But it makes a lot of sense now when I'm older. And
mhm,
I'm not even married now
mhm.
yet. But I've been
Yeah.
in serious relationships to understand that now.
Mhm.
And you definitely understand that. You've been married for about 1,000 years. So you definitely understand that.
In today's time, yeah, it feels
Yeah, in today's time, it
it's
feels
like
like
in
a
dog
thousand
years. It's
years.
like, yeah, I've been married like 200
So
years.
you as a man sacrificed a lot over the years. You told me this yourself.
Mhm,
But you understand the responsibility you have to do that. Because you had 3 rugrats to worry about.
mhm.
Plus, you had to worry about your wife and everything. I get that. So people don't understand that. Like, if what annoys me with today's relationships, I'm not only talking about like boyfriend, girlfriend, or engagement. I'm talking about marriage. When shit hits the fan and it is a problem, uncomfortable problem,
Mhm.
you run away like a coward.
Mhm.
That is my issue. The biggest issue I have. Why run? Why can't you just stick it out and see how can you solve the problem? How can it fix the problem?
Mhm.
But not run from the problem. I don't like people who run from problems,
Yeah.
personally. If
Yeah.
you can sit there and have a conversation or work it out, or if it's my side of the family that's causing the problem or your side, let's figure it out together.
Mhm.
That's the point of the marriage.
Right.
Or am I wrong, Paul?
No, 100%. And to our topic, I'm glad you went there. That has nothing to do, in my view, with progressive versus cultural conservative.
No, it depends on the person, I think.
It has nothing to do with so again, to me, that I think is the um but we get so caught up in those conversations
Hmm.
that we get away from like um again, loyalty, faithfulness, trust, um just a lot of those things have nothing to do with uh your political philosophy, or or what have you. It's really again, it's those things that endure, that like I said, at the end of the day, what kind of outcomes do you want? Like I have a saying that, my kids, my wife, we say this a lot. I say we do what's required. Like I don't care about necessarily your feelings about something. You do what is required at the time. You don't want to take the dog out in the cold. You don't want to do certain things. You don't want to go to commute to work because of the weather or whatever it is. It's like what's required in order to again get the sort of outcome that you want, and that should settle it. So again, what outcome we want in society? What outcome do we want in our personal lives?
But that also
If you
goes
want to
towards
label that
society.
progressive or what have you, then that's totally
Society
your.
has the society with the social media trend now is like beyond crazy, in my opinion,
Mhm,
has kind of screwed up a lot of people's heads. It's not the way it was.
mhm,
Like before, you didn't care whose was your top friends on your list or whose comment was that. You didn't give a shit about that stuff. You cared about the normal every day. Ever since social media came in, I think it put a lot of poison in our brains, and you care about all that stuff.
mhm,
And it's too much. And that's where I think also the less marriage we see is because, oh, he liked her picture. He's probably cheating on me. Relax. I just like the picture. It's not a big deal.
mhm,
So if you're gonna get upset because over liking a picture, we're gonna call it quits. So or we're gonna get in an argument because I like your girlfriend's picture
Mhm.
or boyfriend or whatever, which depends on
Yeah,
which side
I
you're on.
think yeah, but I think either side you're on, the fragility, I think, is really regardless of um, what you believe, what your philosophy is.
Hmm.
I think the fragility is really something I don't think is sustainable. Um, again, no, again, going back to those great dynasties or societies from back in the day, I don't think any of those societies would have lasted with the level of fragility that people have today. You know, I think there's certain things. If you believe something, if you are dedicated to something, I think you have to stay with it, and you work within reasonable means in order to win influence with those ideas, show evidence of its usefulness and success with your ideas. And if those and if you get a following, because of that, then so be it. All the better. We're all better because of it. But there's a lot of people, again, it's all about ideology. It's all about my way, they're right. We're right, they're wrong. And nobody, I think, to a large extent, nobody's winning. Especially, like I said, in politics, when you have people who have again this these ideologies, like who's really the loudest voices. I'm asking the question: are you winning? You got people who are screaming family values and don't have any kids. You're not married. You're talking about tax policy that doesn't even impact you. Because again, where the conversation really is, you're talking about classes in the seven figures and up. That's not you. You had guys for years in these YouTube spaces talking about prenuptial agreements, and you don't even make money that's even worth the discussion. But you wasted a lot of your time talking about something that really doesn't impact you. Or we took celebrity culture and what celebs do, and we try to make that like kind of normalized, like we want to have that as a topic. So that's why I'm constantly going back to this idea of usefulness. So I don't care what your philosophy is. I may take some conservative stuff, I may take some progressive stuff. Is it working? And for me, that's really where I think this conversation needs to go. But I mean, again, just look at the slide tonight. Just looking at the slide for the show, that's enough to either turn people off and not even listen to what we're saying. That someone's going to be real upset with the people on the left side, and people are going to be real upset with people on the right side in that slide. I'm not even going to dig. I mean, you guys can see the slide. I don't want to get into the heavy political here. And both sides, I think, um, can leave a lot to be desired, especially in recent weeks and certainly some of the actions that are going on. And at the end of the day, it's about, again, acquisition of power and influence and money. But we're the pawns in the game. We'll be their biggest, stump. Get on the stump for these people, and we'll rally and say, yeah, this what they're doing, and we'll say all these things. And at the end of the day, are we, the people, are we better off? So again, people being able to think for themselves and really see, sometimes how they're being used in a lot of these political games. I think is certainly a conversation worth having. But again, is whatever you believe, how's it working for you? And I think we go there, and I think we can, we're at the, I think at the closing point start. Peter, you can certainly follow that up. And if you want to start your closing points again, we'll respect the showtime to keep this under
I'm
2
gonna
hours.
combine them together, to be honest with
Go
you.
ahead.
So I don't care about your political views. I care about you being a good person. One of my old neighbors just say he wasn't really religious, and he saw my cross hanging off. I always wear this cross, and he goes, "Oh, I didn't know you were religious." I'm like, "Yeah, I'm religious." Blah blah blah. We start talking. He goes, "Honestly, I respect that, but I don't need to go to church to be a good person. I want to be a good person because I want to be a good fucking person." And I agree with that. To be honest with you, you don't need religion or some kind of political agenda or anything like that. Be a good fucking person because you want to be a good fucking person. If you want to follow certain morals, certain ideas, then follow them. As long as it doesn't hurt anybody and makes you happy and your family, nobody can say whatever they want. Somebody told me once about their situation at home, and I looked at them and says, "Are you happy?" Like, "I'm very happy." Don't give a shit what other people think. They don't know what happens. This is my old little saying. What happens in your bedroom is your business, nobody else's. So, end of the day, if you're happy, you're not hurting anybody or yourself, tell everybody else to go fuck themselves. And that is the quote of today's from Spartan Institute.
I can see you putting that on the what you call a decal on your car. That's like your mantra. Put that as a decal on your car.
Listen, Paul,
I
you
can
know
see
I'm
that.
working on a couple of designs for merch, like shirts and stuff like that. You just give me a good idea. I might put on the back and like Spartan Institute Network. By the way, go fuck yourself in the back.
Well, don't just say that. I mean, that could be. I'm just saying, put it in a. You got to put it in a context that people can kind of embrace it. But yeah, I mean, I think that we have to start thinking differently when it comes to these issues, because there's a lot of agendas at place, and it not necessarily meaning what's in your best interest. And so I think that that's really where this conversation was going tonight. But I want to certainly thank everybody. We've seen like we've had a pretty lively conversation tonight. So with the Noma show, lovely girls of the in the 80s. But again, the question again, which God? Good question. That's something that people have to worry about. I don't even know if that's even the right question. Actually, I take that back, because a lot of it, again, what are you putting into that God? You know what I'm saying? You can say Jesus all you want to, but do your actions jive what he's saying? Or do you think that are you putting Jesus in your image? So that's really that's really where it's at. But with that, we are certainly coming to the end of the show. Again, we want to thank you guys. Again, we got some guys in the chat who have been really interesting tonight. We'll say that. Some people we had to time out and whatnot because again violating the rules of the show. But we don't run away from these conversations. We have them every week. We're going to have a call-in show. For those of you want to chop it up respectfully with us, you can certainly come up. We don't run from having these talks, and you're invited to the conversation. But we're not going to be bashful about what we personally believe and what we want for ourselves. So, but with that, we appreciate you guys for this for coming in tonight. Happy New Year once again. Stay tuned in certainly the Black Man Unfiltered space. Again, the next time you'll probably see me in this space will be on the One-on-One Sports Show, certainly on the Black Man Unfiltered Network. That's Wednesdays at 8 p.m. Peter, his Spartan Arena, Tuesdays at 9:30 on the Black Man Unfiltered Network. And so certainly we are, always trying to come up with new content. And again, we appreciate you guys for being here. So certainly for myself, Mr. Bennett, and he is the Ghost of Sparta, aka Peter, aka Panayotis. This is the gray area. You guys certainly enjoy the rest of your week. I want you guys to take care. God bless. We'll see you next time. Now I'm trying to find again, because BMU is always moving stuff around. I'm trying to find the outro video. Can't you just do me a favor, BMU? Can you just kind of keep it in one place so I don't have to constantly be looking for it? Sometimes Sometimes it's in the end. Some I can't find it. So I'm just gonna may just do a hard just a quick sign off. Yeah, I can't find it. So I'm just gonna end the show here, guys. Have a good night. Take care. God bless. We'll see you next time. Good night.